Welcome back to the Lights Out podcast, bedtime stories for boys and girls, for when the lights go out. Good evening, boys and girls. Are you ready for bed? Are you all snuggled up and ready for another Lights Out bedtime story? Well, you're in for a treat tonight, because we have part 14 of the Twits by Roald Dahl. And tonight's story is called The House, the Tree, and the Monkey Cage. And a big shout out tonight goes to the young Greg Foster from the UK. He has friends around the world, forever. But back to the story, because it's all about the story. Are you listening to this one? It's the house, the tree, and the monkey cage. But that's enough of that. We can't go on forever watching these two disgusting people doing disgusting things to each other. We must get ahead with the story. Here is a picture of Mr. and Mrs. Twits' house and garden. Some house. It looks like a prison, and not a window anywhere. "Who wants windows?" Mr. Twit had said when they were building it. "Who wants every Tom, Dick and Harry peeping in to see what you're doing?" It didn't occur to Mr. Twit that the windows were meant mainly for looking out of, not for looking into. And what do you think of that ghastly garden? Mrs. Twit was a gardener. She was very good at growing thistles and stinging nettles. "I always grow plenty of spiky thistles and plenty of stinging nettles," she used to say. "They keep out the nasty, nosy little children." Near the house you can see Mr. Twit's workshed. To one side there is the big dead tree. It never has any leaves on it because it's dead. And not far from the tree you can see the monkey cage. There are 4 monkeys in it. They belong to Mr. Twit. You will hear about them later. And that's the end of that part of the Twits. The house, the tree, and the monkey cage. That's such a short story. I think I've got to continue tonight, so here is the next part. Hugtight sticky glue. Once a week, on Wednesdays, the Twits had bird pie for supper. Mr. Twit caught the birds and Mrs. Twit cooked them. Mr. Twit was good at catching birds. On the day before Bird Pie Day, he would put a ladder up against the big dead tree and climb into the branches with a bucket of glue and a paintbrush. The glue he used was something called Hugtight, and it was stickier than any other glue in the world. He would paint it along the tops of all the branches and then go away. As the sun went down, birds would fly in from all over around to roost for the night in the big dead tree. They didn't know, poor things, that the branches were all smeared with this horrid Hugtight. The moment they landed on a branch, their feet stuck, and that was that. The next morning, which was Bird Pie Day, Mr. Twit would climb up the ladder again and grab all the wretched birds that were stuck to the tree. It didn't matter what kind they were. Song thrushes, blackbirds, sparrows, crows, little Jenny wrens, robins, anything. They all went into the pot for Wednesday's bird pie supper. Oh dear, that's the end of part 15 of the Twits. Hugtight sticky glue. I don't think I can let you go to bed after that one. Let's have another one. Oh my word, this is part 16 of the Twits by Roald Dahl. 4 sticky little boys. Oh, what's going to happen here? On one Tuesday evening, after Mr. Twit had been up the ladder and smeared the tree with Hugtight, 4 little boys crept into the garden to look at the monkeys. They didn't care about the thistles and the stinging nettles, not when there were monkeys to look at. After a while, they got tired of looking at the monkeys, so they explored further into the garden and found the ladder leaning against the tree, the big dead tree. They decided to climb up it just for fun. There's nothing wrong with that. The next morning when Mr. Twit went out to collect the birds, he found 4 miserable little boys sitting in the tree, stuck as tight as could be by the seats of their pants to the branches. There were no birds because the presence of the boys had scared them away. Mr. Twit was furious.
"As there are no birds for my pie tonight," he shouted, "then it'll have to be boys instead."
He started to climb the ladder.
"Boy pie might be better than bird pie,"
he went on, grinning horribly.
"More meat and not so many tiny little bones."
The boys were terrified.
"He's going to boil us,"
cried one of them.
"He'll stew us alive,"
wailed the second one.
"He'll cook us with carrots,"
cried the third, but the fourth little boy, who had more sense than the others, whispered,
"Listen,
I've just had an idea. We are only stuck by the seats of our pants, so quick, unbutton your pants and slip out of them and fall to the ground." Mr. Twit had reached the top of the ladder and was just about to make a grab for the nearest boy when they all suddenly tumbled out of the tree and ran for home with their naked bottoms winking at the sun. Oh, well, I think that's about time for bed, don't you? That was parts 14, 15 and 16 of The Twits by Roald Dahl. It was The House, the Tree and the Monkey Cage, Hugtight Sticky Glue, and 4 sticky little boys who escaped from the grumpy old Mr. Twits. That's here on the Lights Out podcast, bedtime stories for boys and girls around the world. Good night.